Nick coming to you with another video. So you guys, we are in rhythm part 2 in this music series. Alright you guys, so in the last video, if you recall, I gave you the homework to actually give me 4 measures of whole notes, 4 measures of half notes, and 4 measures of quarter notes. So let's just get right into it as a little quick review, and let's see how much we actually remember. All right, you guys, so just a quick recap. And mind you, as you probably could already tell, this is a different setup. Yes, I'm in a different location, but the lessons must go on. So let's actually get to it. But you guys, if we're doing 4 measures, first things you gotta remember is that a measure must exist on an actual staff. And as I was going in the last video, a staff is comprised of 5 lines. If you can see it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have 5 lines and you have 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's pretty much it. Now we need a staff because we have to notate the sound on sheets of paper, right? Like we have to know, and sound only exists within time. That's very important, you guys. Sound exists within time. So therefore we need a method of actually writing down sound on a piece of paper over time. Now, if you recall, I have this time signature 4/4. Now, for the sake of space, I wrote it up there, but usually it would be actually behind with this note here, which is called the treble clef, right? It's not really a note, it's more so just a sign to show you that we're dealing within the upper range or mid range, really, the treble clef, right? There's also a bass clef, but I'll show you that in another video. But in short, you guys, on the staff, you write your treble clef, and then you would usually write 4/4 time signature after that that sign, that treble clef, right? Now, this is key. The top note tells you how many beats per measure. All right, you guys? It tells you how many beats per measure. Now, if you recall, a measure is these 2 lines here. All right? These 2 lines, and the space in between it is a measure. So now what we have to understand is that within that space, in this time signature, we're saying that there's 4 beats per measure. All right, again, if you feel that you're lost, then try to go back to the last video in rhythm part 1, because I explained all of this in great detail. I just want to get right into it. All right, but that's essentially what the top number means. The bottom number tells you which note takes the value of the beat. So in this particular case, it's telling you that a quarter note, right, which is denoted by the number 4, takes the value of the beat. Now, as we were discussing before, there are 4 quarter notes. And let me write this down just so that you guys can get a reference. But if you have a note here, right, and that's a whole note, right, because it's a circle that's completely blank inside, that's a whole note. And what we must understand is that a whole note is equal to 4 quarter notes. And the quarter note, as you know, it should be circled in. All right, so 1 whole note is equal to 4 quarter notes. Now, you're probably thinking this sounds like a lot of math, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is. It's a lot of math. It's not no calculus level math, but it's math nonetheless. You have to know, at least have some basic understanding of fractions, all right? So with that being said, now we can actually get into the actual homework, okay? So I was saying I want you to give me 4 measures of whole notes. Well, we know that there's 4 beats within a measure, right? Because of the time signature 4/4. And the quarter note takes the value of the beat. So in other words, each time you will play this quarter note, that will be 1 beat. But don't you notice the whole note is worth 4 of those beats because it's worth 4 of those quarter notes. So every one of these measures should have only one whole note. If you did the homework correctly, that's how it should look like. Every one of these measures should have only one whole note because a whole note is the value of 4 beats. All right, I hope you guys understand that. So the second thing is let's draw 4 measures, or let's write down 4 measures of half notes. Well, let's think about it. If a whole note is worth 4 beats, a half note must be worth 2 beats. So what you will notice is that each one of these measures should have 2 half notes. All right, and I'll just draw the stem down because remember, a half note looks just like a whole note, but it has a stem, right? So I'll draw that stem down. And there you have it, you guys. It's that simple. Now, one thing that you have to also bear in mind is that we also have to write 4 measures of quarter notes. So how would that look like? All right. So I did a quick staff on the bottom. Now we need 4 measures of quarter notes. Well, we know that because each measure has 4 beats, the quarter note takes the value of a beat. So we need to have 4 quarter notes within each measure. So it will look something along the lines of this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And make sure you're drawing the stems for each one. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And because it's a quarter note, make sure that each head or that blank circle is filled in. All right, you guys? And that's pretty much it. Now, I want to actually show you something, right? Because again, it's just math at the end of the day. So this is what we have to understand. If a measure is worth 4 beats, right? Then ultimately what you have to understand is that, okay, a whole note is worth 4 beats, right? So 4 divided by 4 gives you 1. And that's the reason why there was only one whole note within each measure. If we keep going down, a half note is worth 2 beats. So again, four notes divided into 2 beats, right? Or I should say 4 beats divided into 2 beats, you're going to end up having 2. That's why there's 2 half notes. And now a measure which has 4 beats divided by 1, right? 4 divided by 1, because the quarter note is only worth 1 beat. That's why you have 4, right? 4 divided by 1 is 4. And it's pretty much the same old, same old. Now, to move forward in your rhythm, right? There's more rhythms outside of just the whole note, half note, and quarter note. There's also eighth note, so let's go into that as well. Now, an eighth note is, and just to give you an understanding, as you can see, the notes keep doubling by 2. I don't know if you've noticed that. So a whole note, there was only 1. A half note, now there's 2 beats or 2 notes within that measure. A quarter note, now there's 4 notes, right? 2 times 2. Now, it's called an eighth note. So obviously 4 times 2 is gonna give you 8. So therefore there's gonna be 8 eighth notes within a given measure. Now, eighth note is written like this, right? It looks like a quarter note, right? It looks like a quarter note, but it has that little dash connected to that stem, right? Or flag connected to the stem. Now, that's 1/8 note. What tends to happen, though, the way we would write it, is that if we were connecting it, it would be written, you probably seen it more so like this, connected to another note, right? And what you need to understand is that is equivalent to only one quarter note. And as we already know, a quarter note is worth how many beats? Only one. So in other words, if we were to write this on, how would that sound like? Let's start there. So a quarter note, it sounds like this, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Now, eighth note, being that it's double, right? The way we count it is 1 and 2 and. Now, if you recall, there's a downbeat and there's the upbeat, right? I'm gonna say that one more time. And we learned that in the last lesson. There's a downbeat and there's the upbeat, right? So when you're counting the eighth note, it's counted this way: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, so it would sound like this: 1, 2 and 3, 4. Now I'm gonna say it with the and: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You see? So now you could imagine over time that these notes will, especially if the tempo is kept the same, these notes will eventually start to sound extremely fast because you have to condense all those notes within that same amount of time. Again, music only exists within time, right? So nothing in actuality is fast per se. It all depends on your tempo. But just know that if you're keeping the time or the tempo the same and you squeeze in more notes within that time frame, that's the reason why it gives the illusion of you're playing fast, right? So again, eighth notes: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? Versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, etc., right? It sounds a lot slower. Now, here's one thing I must stress out before I even continue, right? Because I notice a lot of students, you listen to your favorite musicians and all you see them doing is going extremely fast and they play very virtuosic, and you might feel the need that I want to play fast just like those guys to prove how great I am. And you guys, this is why the rhythm, I told you, this is going to be the most important study. Do not rush. Take your time to learn all the notes, no matter how boring it may seem now. Learn the notes in proper time, playing with a metronome. If you do that consistently, eventually you're going to be able to play in time. When you're playing these eighth notes and eventually 30-second notes and etc., 16 notes and then 30-second notes, etc., what you're going to notice is that I'm going to sound a lot more confident because I know how to play in time, and you're not going to be fumbling over your notes. You're going to sound like you're actually a professional. All right, so don't rush to do the fast things if you can't play this slow. Again, I'll prove it to you. I'm going to really slow down my counting and show you that 16 notes, or eighth notes, is really not that fast as you may think it is. All right, so I'm going to count this slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's play that same eighth notes. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. I could go even slower. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. You see, notice how I played it so slow that the eighth note sounded probably like the way we would have played quarter notes. Am I making sense? So I need you guys to understand that, all right? Now, how would that look on the actual staff? So because I need to fit more in, I'm going to probably just erase some of those lines. And let's actually deal with only 2, all right? So let's see what a measure of 16 notes, eighth notes, I keep calling it 16, eighth notes. Let's see how a full measure of eighth notes look like, all right, you guys? So again, as the name suggests, it's called eighth note. There's going to be 8 of those notes present. So it will be drawn as this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now notice I connect it like this. And then you color it in. Again, the downbeat, and I'm gonna show it to you. The first beat, I'm gonna call it 1. And when I say and, I'm gonna denote that as a plus sign. So it will be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The and is the upbeat. All right? I know this sounds repetitive. I'm saying a lot of the same things in the same exact ways. But I need to be repetitive so that it just really sticks with you, all right, you guys? Because if you can get this, I guarantee your musicianship is going to explode. You're going to get to another level, all right, you guys? A lot of people get stuck on this. They don't have their rhythm down, all right, you guys? All right, now, for the sake of time, what I'm also going to do is show you what's called a dotted note. Now, a dotted note is extremely interesting, guys. A dotted note, now, there's more notes, as you probably heard me say. We stopped at eighth, there's 16 notes. I'm gonna put it on the screen for you to see, but there's 16 notes, there's 32 second notes. So, again, what I tend to find out is, if you want to learn it, leave that up to you. If you want to learn it, or if you want me to go over it, I can go over it. But again, because a lot of it is just a matter of your tempo, it's really not that hard for you guys to understand, all right? It's just know that you need to condense more notes within that same exact measure, right? Okay, but matter of fact, I'll just do 60 notes for you, just because that's the kind of person I am. I'll leave you off with 60 notes because most music tend to at least have that, right? So a 60 note, if we had a quarter note, which is again 1 beat, a 60 note would be worth a quarter of a quarter. So that means you would have 4 60 notes within 1 quarter note. I'm gonna explain that in further detail. So it would look like this. Now, notice I connected, but you're probably thinking to yourself like, oh, what's the difference? That's because we need to add 2 flags this time. All right, and color it in. That is a 16 note. So now, again, how would that look like? You can imagine drawing 16 of those notes within 1 measure, and then you have to connect it with 2 flags, okay? Now, I'm gonna leave that there. Again, if you want me to go over it in greater detail, I can do that. But just to I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm gonna try to keep it pushing. But that's essentially what a 16th note is. Now, what we're gonna go over is a dotted note. Okay? Now, a dotted note is very interesting because what a dotted note essentially does is take whatever value of the note that you're playing and it adds a half onto it. Now, you're probably like, what in the world does that even mean? All right, so let's take it slow. So now we have a dotted note. So a dotted note is, let's say, in the case of a dotted half note, we know that a half note looks like this, right? It pretty much is a circle that's blank and it has a stem. We know that the value of a quarter note is 2, which I'm gonna write under it. The value of that quarter note is worth 2. Now, a dotted half note is, again, that same half note, a circle with a stem. But what's interesting is that it has this dot right next to it. Okay, now what did I say it means? It means you take the value of whatever note you're playing and you add half of its value. So again, it's just some basic math. If a half note is worth 2, and I say that I add half of its value, what is half of 2? Half of 2 is 1, right? So I'm gonna add 1, and this is just basic math. 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. So a dotted half note is worth 3. So how does a dotted half note sounds like? Well, the same way we would play any other note, right? So if a half note sounds like this, 2 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice I play for 2 beats, right? Now, to play a dotted half note, it's worth 3 beats. So all we're gonna do is hold it for 3 beats. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice on the 4, I can't play it. Now, this is something I really want you to understand because again, it's math. Every measure within the case of 4/4 can only have 4 beats. So my question to you is this: can you have 5 quarter notes within a measure? No, because 5 is more than 4. You can only hold 4 quarter notes. So, in other words, the value of all the notes within a given measure needs to add up to 4 beats, because we in the case of 4/4, and we already know the top number tells you how many beats per measure, right? Now, what you'll find out is that there are actual time signatures where it says 5/4. In that situation, because 5 is the top number, you can have 5 quarter notes, right? But it has to add up to how many, or it needs to add up to the top number, the numerator, or how many beats that measure could hold. In this case, 5/4, right, in the hypothetical, but in the actual example, we did with 4/4, so we can only have 4 beats. Now, getting back to the dotted half note, I cannot have 2 dotted half notes, because if a dotted half note is the value of 3, I cannot play 2 dotted half notes within that same measure, because that value would be 3 plus 3, which is 6, and 6 is greater than 4. So in other words, what you have to realize is that let's say if I wanted to play another note, so you can do what I did, which was to stay silent on the 4th beat, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or you will know that, okay, cool. If I want to play within that last, beat, what note can we play that has a value of 1 beat? Oh yeah, quarter note. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or as we've learned today, we can play 8th note. Now, an 8th note, you just know that it will be counted as 4 and, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and. Now you could probably imagine already that the possibilities of different rhythms that you can play is pretty much endless. It all depends on your creativity and your imagination. But that's pretty much it, right? So that's a dotted half note. Now, a dotted quarter note, so let me actually just fill this in to make this become a quarter. And now this is a dotted quarter note. Now, a dotted quarter note, as you probably remember, or rather a quarter note, is the value of 1. Okay, cool. So it's the value of 1. Now, a dotted quarter note, now what's half? So we need to add half of the value of the note that we're playing. So if the quarter note is worth 1 beat, we need to add half of 1, which is 1/2. It's just 1/2. So now this is interesting because now 1 plus 1/2 is obviously 1 and 1/2. Now, why is this important? Because although it's 1 and 1/2, the way you count it is extremely crucial, guys. It's extremely crucial. So I'm going to teach you how to count it right now. Now, again, when the downbeat is the beginning of that measure. So when we're saying 1, like in the case of, right, the staff, we're saying 1, but one whole beat has not yet been played. The totality of that beat is when we're saying 1 and, right? So in other words, why is that important? Because if you're playing a dotted quarter note, although you see 1.5, how does that look like? Well, you're gonna see that I actually say the number 2 when I'm counting. All right, now why am I saying number 2? You're gonna see it. It's gonna be the way you count a dotted quarter note is 1, 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, right? 1 and 2. I can say 1, 2, 1 and 2. Now, you're going to see how that sounds like, right? So, in other words, what you'll see is that a whole note, I'm going to write it over here. I'm going to rewrite it again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So, a dotted quarter note is a quarter note right here, dotted. And it takes the value of the 1 and 2, which would make sense, right? Because think about it. If 2/8 notes, right? If 2/8 notes is the value of 1 and, the downbeat and the upbeat, 1 and is 2/8 notes. Now, in order to add that extra half, and an eighth note is pretty much a half, right? As you probably have noticed, right? 1 and, right? So what you would notice is that I have to say 1 and 2. It needs 2. So a dotted quarter note, I'm going to circle it over here. Hopefully you guys can see it. Is worth 3/8 notes. So how does that sound like? So it sounds like this. And let me just draw an eighth note here. All right? So it's going to sound like this. 1 and 2 and 1, right? 1 and 2 and 3, 4, right? And I say 3, 4 because I could draw 2. You could do whatever you want, but in this example, I'm going to do 2 more quarter notes to finish up a full measure of 4. All right, so 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So I did this for a reason because again, it tricks a lot of students up. The dotted quarter note, you although you're saying the number 2, you're not actually playing for 2 whole beats because the beat ends when you say and. I hope I'm making sense. And if I don't, please put it down in the comments so that I can explain it in greater detail in another video, because I admittedly, I'm not face to face with you, so I know this concept can be hard to grasp. But this is the reason why I split up the rhythm videos, because I knew that this was going to be rather difficult to understand. Again, I'm going to say it one last time to end off. A full beat is when you're saying and, because the beat does not finish when you actually are doing the downbeat or when your feet touches the floor, right? Remember I was showing you in the last video, if this was your feet and you would tap into the music, you pretty much tap into the downbeat and the upbeat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now, or if you say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But when you're saying 1, the beat just started. So that's why don't be confused because you're saying the number 1 that you actually had played for a full beat. You have not. The beat ends when you say and. Okay, so it's 1 and that's a full beat. 1 and is a full beat. Now, in the case of a dotted quarter note, you actually, again, when you just because you say the number, saying that number within the context of rhythm only starts the beat. You're not playing the full beat in totality. So that's the reason why we saying 2, and that's not to be mistaken for a half note, which you might also say 2. But remember, this is what a half note would sound like: 1 and 2 and, right? 1 and 2 and, versus a dotted quarter note, which is just 1 and 2. This is how it would sound like in terms of the actual musical sounds. I'm gonna play a half note. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? That's a full 2. I'm sustaining the note for a full 2 beats versus a dotted quarter note, which is worth 3/8 notes, or it's gonna say 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and, right? Or if I was to continue to measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? Or, and so now if I was to play this, right? Play this measure, excuse me, it would be 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Notice I played that quarter note on the and. Woo! All right, you guys. So again, this is gonna be important in your musicality. I guarantee you. I know this was a lot of math for today, but it's really not that hard once you could just wrap your mind around it. All right. I'm gonna end the rhythm section or the rhythm series of this music of these music videos right here. We're gonna always reference rhythm because you can't play music without any of the 3 components: harmony, melody, or rhythm. We can't play music at all. But I'm not gonna go into the actual mathematics of rhythm. Now, if you want to actually learn and understand the mathematics of rhythm, again, you need to write it down in the comments, so perhaps I can make another video that goes in greater depth where I can even give you more. But again, this video is getting quite lengthy and I don't want it to be too long. Okay, now I do want to show you one thing, right? This is just a little bonus, all right? I'm feeling kind of good. This is just a bonus, all right, you guys? So check this out. All right, so I have this funk beat that's playing in the background. Now, what are we gonna do? I'm gonna show you the importance of rhythm, right? I'm gonna do one example where I'm gonna be totally playing with rhythm that is totally incomprehensible. Is gonna be trash. And truth be told, even that, you know, if you do it, I won't confuse you too much. But pretty much, I'm gonna try to play as trash as possible. All right, guys. When you get advanced, you realize that technically it's all about how you choose to play the notes. So, like, you know, sometimes there's techniques out there where people purposely play in such a way that's very odd, but that doesn't mean it necessarily sounds bad if you're doing it with intention. But I'm also gonna add this. Again, I'm gonna play in a way that I'm gonna try to play with no sense of rhythm at all, and you're gonna be like, oh man, I'm not really adding, even though this sounds great, just the drums and the bass alone sounds awesome, but you're gonna see when you add somebody that has horrible rhythm, just because you can really ruin the whole chemistry of the band, all right? And you're gonna see why I put so much emphasis on rhythm. All right, check this out. So, no, hopefully you guys can hear me. But if I was gonna count this, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now look what ends up happening, right? I'm gonna purposely play off. Alright, now I totally chose to play random notes that I purposely was trying to just debacle the song. Random notes, random rhythm, had no sense whatsoever. Now look what happens when I actually play with intention. I'm gonna play with a sense of musicality, and your musicality is gonna be based off of your understanding of what key we're in. If you guys didn't see that video, I actually showed you how to find the key of the song. I'm not actually gonna tell you. If you guys want to even write it in the comments, that would be pretty cool to see if you guys can build up your ear training. But yeah, I'm gonna actually play with intention, and you're gonna see what happens when you play with actual rhythm. All right, you guys, and it is me. There's no reason for me to lie, but hey, just check it out for yourselves. Right? So, as you can see, I played with a lot more intention. Now, there was an actual, like, oh, okay, I see. And why is that? Because my rhythm was more in tune, right? I'm gonna play it one more time, and I'm gonna purposely even break it down even further, right? Like, what's my thought process while I'm doing this? So, I'm gonna purposely play with whole notes. 2, 3, 4. Got a quarter note. 1 and 2 and 1. Right? So 1, 2, 3. When you combine all your rhythm patterns, let's see now, let's start to make some music out of it. Alright? again, I'm I'm playing very mechanical right now, right? Like, as I'm purposely trying to think about rhythm. Obviously, when you study this on your own, you're not really gonna be trying to think about, oh, what rhythm am I trying to play, right? This is something that's gonna be ingrained in you over time. But what I am saying is that if you don't practice with a metronome, if you don't practice with something that's keeping time for you, then that's the reason why when you play with a band, it's gonna sound like you are the weakest link. It's gonna sound like you're not adding to the music. And then, like I said, something that sounds good, like the drummer in this case, even though it's played by the machine, the drummer is gonna sound good, the bass is gonna sound good. But if you play out of key, if you play, which I taught you in the melody, right? If you to know how to play in key, right? If you're playing out of key, if you're playing with very loose and weird rhythm, you're gonna make the musicality of the overall song sound bad. You're gonna drag the entire band down. And this is the reason why in your musical journey you have people that's like, man, get this dude off the stage, right? Again, I'm trying to keep this short. I know, this portion of the video short, but I just wanted to throw this nugget in there because, again, rhythm is important, and I hope you saw that even in this short snippet. We're gonna dive way deeper. So stay tuned for the next video. So in the next video, we're gonna actually go over harmony. Now, this is gonna be interesting because we already covered melody, which is the scales. We covered our rhythm, but now we're gonna go into harmony, which, if you remember in the first video, was two or more notes played at the same time. And now when we play the harmony and add melody on top of the harmony, then we're gonna start to create actual music. All right, so I hope you guys are excited about that. For you guitar players, you're gonna start learning your chords. Piano players, you're gonna start learning your chords. So this is gonna be extremely interesting. Sorry for those of you, including myself. I'm a saxophone player primarily, so hey, it's not gonna be as enjoyable for us because we usually stuck to the melody. But I take that back because your understanding of harmony is actually going to be very critical as well. Because if you can, and same for trumpet players, all of you single line instruments, right? Your understanding of harmony is going to be extremely important in how you solo in the future. So although you don't play chords, I strongly suggest that you stay tuned and watch the harmony series the same, because it will benefit you and it will improve in your overall musicality. With that being said, you guys, Nick over and out. Jesus is king, y'all.